Coaching as Benevolence, a podcast for people who are curious about using coaching for self-development. I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings Grief and Loss Coaching.
And I'm LaShawn with Michelle Sage Place Positive Intelligence Coaching.
So there's a lot going on in current events with a school shooting in Evergreen, Colorado. That's close to home for us. And then also the murder of Charlie Kirk, and that's like all over social media. And so today, Eryn and I are going to talk about what we as coaches would do if one of our clients came into a session with all of this stuff that's happened and how it has affected them, and maybe they're distracted or they just need to process. So we're going to just kind of talk about how we would approach that. I'll start off by saying that if a client came into my session and was, upset about what was going on and wanted to process it and talk about it, first thing that I would do as a positive intelligence coach would encourage my client to start the session, as with any session with a positive intelligence coach, with some, breathing and some getting into like a more grounded, neutral state, so that when we did address these things that were affecting them, that it would be done in a way that it wouldn't, the emotional levels wouldn't be so high, and we would be able to approach it from a little bit of a distance. So that's the first thing I would do. I would what we call PQ reps, which is just kind of a mindfulness exercise which grounds you and gets you into the present and kind of gets those stress reactions, addresses that. And it also activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to allow you to be in a calm and objective state of mind. And so that's the first thing that I would do. Of course, everything that happens in the session when I work with clients is dictated by the client. So I would then first gently invite the client, acknowledge that they're upset, and say that's understandable that you would be upset. A lot of people are upset about the situation. And how do you feel about starting our session as usual with some PQ reps? And then take it from there. And if the client has other needs, I would address those. Eryn, how about you?
I like that approach. And I think I myself need to do what some of my clients, I create space for them to do at the beginning of a coaching session. And that is a concept in coaching called clearing. And so I'll demonstrate now, as if I'm the client, what clearing might look like from a client's side. Really, clearing is the concept of letting them come into the space and just kind of stream of conscious, dump out what they might need. Some people set a timer for clearing for like 3 to 5 minutes. Others let it go on longer. It obviously just depends on the space. So I'm the client here, and here is my clearing. LaShawn, right before I met you, I strangely enough met up with a friend of mine, and we were talking about gun violence and different challenges and supports to, this process. And I'm really struggling to find a way through and with this process due to the dynamic challenges that are presented in the world we live in, right? And I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm nervous, I'm sad. I'm holding all of these emotions because of the lack of shift, the lack of change that's happening in our culture. On the other end of it, I'm also feeling hopeless and helpless, and I don't even know what to really do about it. So one thing that my friend talked about prior to this is I wanted to share this. He said that it's easier to unite against something than it is to unite for something. And I think I'd like to explore something like that in my coaching session. Yeah, it's about my own internal emotions and everything else, but it's also about that concept of everybody screams loudly about uniting against something, right? Everything from how people who are pro-gun owners to people who are, anti-gun, and then everything in between. There's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of just craziness happening because people want to unite against something instead of for something. And so when I think of uniting for something, it's like, how do we move forward with that? What could that look like? How do we talk about policies that benefit the collective, that keep in mind that this is change that we're going to need to build toward for multiple years? And then on top of that, like, I'm trying to to sit in this space because I have to clear this in this appointment today. My husband, who works for a school district, is on the reunification team. And with the Evergreen shooting, there have been more challenges at the various high schools. And so, one of the things that happens when there is a potential threat is that some students, run and leave, right, the building, rightfully so. And so, just this last week, my own, partner in life, my own husband had to deal with the external stressors of what's going on and how to reunite students with their families through this whole process. And so I just cleared a lot on this topic. And I know I want to kind of revisit a lot of these things that I'm feeling and thinking about, but that's where I'm at. And I think the other clearing pieces, I just want to come to this with a little bit more groundedness, like you said, with the PQ reps being a good place to start. And then just, I don't know, finding a way to hold on to hope. So now switching back to the coach, that was an example of a client coming in and being able to just really let out what they're truly thinking and feeling in the space. And I think that as the coach, that is created by belief in the client, that they know themselves and that they are in the driver's seat of the session, while also recognizing that when we hold open that space, then we can start to move into a coaching framework instead of just automatically jumping on problem solving or automatically thinking we need to talk about one topic on this situation over another. Because as we dig in, as the coach then digs into that clearing from the client, and then we can then find what it is they truly want the most support for, how we can co-construct and collaborate with them. So that would be an example of the beginning of a session in terms of coaching on this topic in particular.
How did it feel for you going into that space where you were clearing and just putting all of those emotions and thoughts into the middle, to use a term from Kyla Mitsunaga? How did that feel? Like, what were you experiencing as you were clearing?
I felt some more lightness with my emotions. And then I also felt that my brain was kind of shifting and that I was getting out all of this information that was running in the background of my mind by able to get it to the forefront and move it in some direction. I feel like I have a little bit more hope for today's session, and that the coach will help me be able to navigate what I truly want and need. So those are some of the things I was feeling. And then towards the end of that, just like brain dump of that, my feet were on the floor and I could feel them more. At the beginning, I could not. So it was kind of a way to move into my mind and body and spirit a little bit more fully. And then on the other end of that, I want to note that in coaching, clearing isn't always the client coming in with the topic at hand. They may need to clear something that just happened like 30 minutes ago or something, and then move into more of the similar topics. But on the other hand, this was a good example of clearing because it was at the forefront of my mind. And it was something I was doing right before this meeting. So getting that conversation out into the open can be helpful.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting observing you because at the beginning, I would say that like the emotions and the thoughts were coming out very quickly. And then after you named all of the emotions that you were going through, you slowed down and it was like you kind of landed and your cadence changed and you seemed a lot more measured in what you had to say. And then when you brought up the whole Evergreen shooting and then the involvement that your partner had with reunification with students who like left the building or that kind of thing, having to deal with that, that was heightened again. And then you came back down again. And it was just really interesting to see the process that you went through and that the things that were coming up, like for example, fighting for or against something, and then also hope. Hope was like, I think, one of the last things that you said. And that was, to me, just observing it, it allowed me to kind of go through my own. And of course, as a coach, I would be observing and serving the client. But just as a human being, just to see that, it's like, as a human being, I was like, yes, those emotions, I feel those emotions too. And I also see that it's that what you said about your friend, it's easier to unite people against something than for something. And there's just so many things coming up there. And I think just having that experience or that space, holding that space for you to clear, those emotions and thoughts was, I thought, a really good start to a session, and one that I hadn't used, a technique that I hadn't used before. And it was really just interesting how that worked, to, talk it out of the feelings that you had and the thoughts that you had. And one thing that comes to mind is, I know in the past, like quite recently, we did like mini coaching demos. And I was thinking maybe it might be a good idea, if you feel aligned, if this feels aligned for you, just to do like a mini coaching demo for each other, where we take turns being client and coach. And I was going to propose that I be the coach and you continue being the client, because you were demonstrating client and you were going through the clearing. And I was thinking, then I can take over and be the coach and start asking you some questions and kind of process through for about 10 minutes. And then we switch, and then we can do like a demo for me. What do you think?
I love that idea. I really think that that creates a very rich space for showcasing coaching techniques and then also tackling this topic, right? That is so
Mhm.
big and that we need to be doing. And so, yes, this sounds good.
Okay, so we would shift to a coaching demo. We will imagine that Eryn is my client and has just finished clearing. And Eryn, just for maybe a reflection, or just to refresh some of the ideas that came out, you could just give me one phrase uh, describing where you are now, mentally, emotionally, and where you'd like to go in this session. So more than one phrase too,
Yeah.
because I have two questions there. So
Yeah,
where
no.
you are
So, and it
now,
might be a little bit more than that too.
yeah, of course, and that's fine. Where you are now and where you'd like to go.
So I am in a space where I feel ready to have open conversations about hard topics. And yes, that is much easier done in a coaching session one-on-one and through a coaching framework. But even in doing that today and practicing that, my hope is not only that, this is for my own healing and growth, but that we use this as a time to have opportunities in our communities to talk more about challenging concepts with people who we maybe don't align with. Because it does, like in clearing, using that phrase, it's harder to unite for than against. That really sticks with me. And I think that's what I want to explore in coaching. How do we unite for? And I know that takes it out of kind of like only about me to kind of me talking about policy or like, so
Mm.
that could be a little bit challenging, but I think that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you've identified where you're at, where would you like to be at the end of this mini coaching session?
I think I want to be in a space where I will actually follow through with something regarding this topic that is mindful, helpful, compassionate. I think that's where I want to be.
Yeah. So as you're saying this, what's coming to mind is kind of a thought, um, using the positive intelligence framework. And I'm looking at the different options that we have just based on what you said. One thing that comes to mind, because you mentioned compassion, is the perspective of the sage perspective. And so when I think of the sage perspective, that wiser, self, the one that is rooted in the essence of our being, that is tapped into that goodness, that well-being of all humanity. I think about we could do a flash forward, or we could even do a empathy, where we're looking at the different aspects of this situation. So that's one thing we can do. Those are the two things that I was thinking about when you mentioned those words, especially compassion. So do either of those, flashing forward or just focusing on the empathize power of the sage, what would you like to do? Or can you think of any other sage perspectives or sage traits that we can tap into?
Yeah. Logically, it's like, oh, we should focus on empathize because that needs to happen before the fast forward.
Hmm.
But if I am in tune with where I'm at, and honestly, I want to look at the fast forward.
Okay. All right. So I'll invite you to get comfortable in your chair, and we're just going to get settled for this journey. You can either take a soft focus or you can close your eyes, whatever feels comfortable to you. We're going to take a deep breath in and a deep and out. One more deep breath in and exhale. And one more deep breath in and exhale. And now just breathe normally. And just imagine that you are rising up, up, up out of your body, through the top of your head, up, up, higher, 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 through the ceiling, through the roof, all the way out. And as you rise up, time and space is going to shift. It's going to shift forward, and it's going to shift forward. And you are safe, and everything is gentle and safe. And now you're going to descend down very slowly, down, 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 and to another time and space. And where you're landing is a safe place. Somewhere it can be imaginary or it can be real. Maybe it's in your office that you're in now, or it could be outdoors, indoors. It's a safe place wherever you're landing. And as you get into your body and you're anchored, look around. What do you see? And then you see before you, standing before you, probably about 6 feet away, is your wiser self. This is you in the future. And you are completely, this future you're completely tapped into your well-being. Look at the future you. Look at your hair, your face. What is your facial expression? The future you, your eyes. And now you're going to walk slowly toward the future you, and you're going to greet each other. However feels aligned. It could be a bow, it can be a hug, you can grab each other's hands, whatever feels aligned. And now, as you are taking in the sight of your future self, this future self has lived through this current time of turmoil and you are now in the future, and it's a different time. And she has some information for you about the incident. And you can ask her a question. So take the time to ask her a question about the current incident that you left. What is her wisdom? Take a moment to hear her answer. So now imagine that you have one more question. And that is, what is the most important thing about the situation? What is the most important thing? Now, ask her what is not important. Now, the time has come to say goodbye to your future self. So, whatever feels aligned, say goodbye to your future self. And now, instead of descending up, you are going to embrace your future self. And your future self is going to transform into warm golden light. And she is going to dissolve into your body. And the time and space is going to move back and back and back and back and back and back to our current situation. You have your future self in your heart, and her wisdom is with you. And when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes. All right. So, what would you like to share about that experience?
I struggled with this experience today. I got a few kind of key images and thoughts, but it felt like I was having to work for them with the sage. And so I'm curious about that experience for myself. One thing that really stuck out was like this deep sadness from my future self and like this big hole, like huge hole that I was trying to dig out of alone, and like how challenging that is to how that represented like this huge social problem, I think, and the recognition of this has to be done together, right? We have to start taking on these topics multi-generationally together. I don't know, there was something there that came from that. And that was the other piece after that experience at the end, was just this idea of not doing it alone. And so as a solopreneur, it makes me curious too about what that means currently for myself and then looking into the future.
Hmm. Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. I think there's just a lot to consider what's what the scenario is being played out for, like in my mind versus in my soul versus my body, and not versus, but just in total. And I think it's going to take a little bit more time to revisit this scenario.
Hmm. So, given this experience and what has emerged from that, what feels aligned to do next?
I mean, I think it does warrant a having these conversations with more people, not just in my mind. And going from there, like this concept of togetherness and going back to that unification, how we unite, how we can unite for something that fits the needs of most people. And I know that's like a lot to take on at a personal level, and maybe, on another day I won't feel so action oriented, but today I just do feel that action piece.
So, to have the conversation with a larger group.
Yeah.
And what does that look like for you, that larger conversation?
I mean, I think it's easiest starting in the church, maybe. Um, I need to talk with a few people and see what their thoughts are. Um, yeah, I don't know. It feels heavy. I mean, it feels like a lot too. So just like taking that offline and just having more conversations for me as a starting point could be good.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's a lot to carry on your own, and it requires more people than just yourself. Right.
Yes.
Okay. So, we're close to the end. Is there anything else that you would like to say or anything else that you would like to address before we complete the session?
S- I mean, say to our audience as like a public announcement, like we need to do this.
Yeah, call to
We,
action.
yeah, call to action. Yeah. We need people who are listening, who want to engage with us on this topic to find ways to move forward with a long-term view in mind and a nonpartisan view in mind. And I don't know, it's just like the time has to be now.
So, how do you feel now that you are towards the end? And you did mention what you wanted out of this session. How close are you to that?
I mean, that's with the bigness of it all. I'd say, as far as what I wanted out of the session, I got what I wanted out of the session and needed out of the
Mhm.
session. So thank you for that, for sure. That was
Mhm.
really helpful. As far as like the bigger picture of it all, I'm like, whoo, okay, there's a lot there.
Yes. Hmm. Okay.
So more follow through and more coaching sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of is a good segue into how can I support you as we in the session and beyond.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe as my partner on this podcast, maybe we could come up with a community dialogues
Hmm.
thing that we take on and have those in person.
Hmm.
And maybe they're part of the podcast or not, but us
Hmm.
continuing to brainstorm ways. I think that's how I could use your help, brainstorm ways on how we can use our current voice to
Hmm.
elevate some other key issues.
Yeah. Of course, you have my support.
Awesome.
All right.
That feels good.
Okay. So we're shifting gears. Now, Eryn is the coach and I am the client. Okay.
So are we taking off from you've already grounded yourself as your
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're coaching specifically on the topic of gun violence.
Gun violence and I would say just the division in our country is
Yeah.
what's really
Okay.
weighing heavily on my mind.
What about that division in the country is weighing on you?
It does seem, I mean, I had the impression, I knew that when Donald Trump was reelected for a second term, that that would only further divide the country and in a really dramatic way. And I held on to the hope that that would give rise to a new type of revolution, that people would be sick of being enemies with their fellow humans, Americans, and that they would maybe find a way to bridge the gap. And what ended up happening was people just seemed what seems to be happening is that people are just doubling down on what they've been doing for, for the past like 10, 20 years. Just insisting on the fact that they're right. And I think that I think that Turning Point USA has their intentions, I think, are good in terms of bringing people together through debate, discourse, hoping to just have a conversation. However, the fact that it was done in a kind of contentious and um, the fact that the phrase was "prove me wrong," that isn't something that's going to bring people together. It's going to further divide us because then you're either right or wrong. And I think that this whole desire to be right is a main reason why we continue to be divided. And I believe that the United States is our legacy is one of division. And the United States has been divided since its inception. So, um, It would be great if we could take this social experiment and it could rise or emerge to a place where we can find a way to accept differences in a way that's authentic and not forced, but just simply through a change in behavior and culture in a kind and compassionate way. And I don't think that either side is being kind or compassionate when it comes to differences. And what I mean by differences, and I'm talking about differences in opinion, different ways of looking at where we want the country to go. And I feel like it's disheartening that again, a death of someone who is a prominent figure in social media, popular culture, in a violent death at that, is either, like your friend said, either going to unite people against or unite for. And what's ended up happening is they're continuing to double down. I'm just seeing the two parties, the two perspectives, just doubling down more and more. And it's just like getting more and more polarized. And it's sad to see. And like you, I am compelled to take action. I feel like the time of contemplation or staying in my lane, whatever that is over. And I do feel like that the time is now and to come up with a way to bring people together and start building bridges. And so that's my main concern, is that if we continue on this trajectory, that we will most likely be headed to like more violence and more um, just not seeing eye to eye and losing sight of what really matters, which to me is unifying and really being living up to our name, United States. We're not the divided states, we're the United States. So can we be the United States? I don't know. That is that is something that and then I also think about what my role is, because just from my experience as a coach, my life experience has told me that I feel better and I feel more impactful and I feel more powerful when I stick to my sphere of influence. And so when I kind of retract, like I look out and I see all this stuff happening, and then I look at my sphere of influence, say, what's happening in my sphere of influence? What can I do that's really going to make a difference? Um, and I feel like my work in nonprofit is helping, working with children and families. That to me, just every day that I'm helping to empower and nourish and um, support and providing a place where people can go where they feel safe, they feel heard, and they feel seen is like my contribution. And I am also interested in how to expand that. So in the next like 4 or 5 minutes, I would like to explore what that would look like. Yeah, I'd like to do a little bit of, you know, exploration into what that would look like. Like, what would it look like if it just started out with a very small thing and it just kind of expanded? Because I find that a lot of like grassroots movements and things that happen, they kind of catch on or they don't. And so I'm just, I'd like to think, yeah, to explore ways that we can expand that conversation, and also through action, how do we build bridges that last?
I like that question. And I think to get to that question, there are a few things that stood out to me.
Mhm.
One was you started with the topic of division, and then you moved into building bridges, and then into sphere of influence.
Mhm.
Out of those three, is there a starting place for you with making change?
I feel compelled to focus on is sphere of influence. I mean, that to me has power. And I think, and one of the things that you were talking about when you said division, bridges, and sphere of influence, I thought of like the neural network and how things are connected and you have these little nodes, right? And I feel like we are connected in so many different ways. And I feel like if we start with our sphere of influence, and then that's going to influence someone in our sphere of influence, and they're going to influence their sphere of influence, and then and it's going to be like a domino effect. And so I do feel like my starting point would be my own sphere of influence.
Okay, yeah. And when you say your own sphere of influence, what do you notice in your body?
Well, there's definitely an opening up in my body. My chest is open more. I feel more grounded. Yeah, I would say that it's an more open and more grounded. There's like a sense of confidence in that.
Okay, yeah. Well, since we are focused on action, maybe we can just popcorn brainstorm some ideas for your sphere of influence.
Sounds good.
You get to start.
Yeah, I get to start. Well, one of the things is, as you know, Eryn, and we've talked about this a couple times in the episodes this year, because I was in a leadership fellowship, and I just think that's where I would start. Um, an invitation to them, my fellows, to really take what we've learned in these 9 months that we have done this leadership fellowship and put it, I guess, to the test, or put it in practice, put it in practice. What can we as rising leaders in the Boulder County do to continue to nurture and strengthen our bonds and, do something for the good of all, and then for to increase the well-being and the relationships um, of all people that are in the Boulder County. And like, how can we as leaders model that in our group of 26 or 24 people? I think it's 24, I don't remember. But that, that have been working together for 9 months, going to these sessions, learning about Boulder County, learning about leadership, learning about local government, learning about all the resources that we have out there. Like, how can we utilize those resources, tap into those resources, and expand what we started in the 9 months that we were working together, and really make something meaningful and impactful that's going to last. And it's not just a one and done thing. I think that's a lot of people get together, they mobilize on one cause. And then when all is done, like they have a solution, the solution is there, and then they kind of fall away. What I would like to see is just to have that starting point with those rising leaders, and then reaching out to the alumni too. There's like 400 or more people who have taken part in this, and just, building bridges in that community and saying, hey, how do we create lasting unity within Boulder County? So that's one thing I thought of.
So it sounds like focused within Boulder County, which aligns with your nonprofit that you also have a touch point within the community too. Um, so I'll popcorn an idea back to you from that.
Mhm.
So let's say you organize maybe via email or something, a first meeting. What would that first meeting look like?
I think the first meeting would be getting clear on our vision and getting clear on a mission. So we need to have the proper, we need to have a very clear idea of what we're doing. And um, so yeah, I think it would be a meeting where we would get together and say, okay, so next steps, life after Boulder, Boulder County Leadership Fellowship. What is what is our next steps, and what is our mission, and what is our vision? And then we would come together in that first meeting. And the end goal would be the start, because I know how these things are, the start of a mission and a vision statement that we would then be, it would be a dynamic document, and it would be like a Google Doc or some doc that we could share, and we would all kind of refine it and refine it and refine it. And then our next meeting would be, okay, let's now lock into this mission and vision. And so from this mission and vision, what are our action steps? So that's what I'm thinking.
And how does that feel to lead that and take that on?
Feels good. Feels good.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm trying to find a way to close this out, but also be able to address challenges. So challenges and difficulties will clearly come up, as well as some really maybe unexpected good things and too. So what will help you stay flexible through the process?
Yeah, there will be challenges. And I think what will help me stay flexible through the process is just to be intentional about staying in touch with and keeping the momentum going, and just taking that on as my responsibility just to keep the momentum going. It does not necessarily mean that if the momentum stops, like for example, if I call a meeting and then I get a whole bunch of emails saying I can't do it that day or something came up or whatever, being flexible as to what that's going to look like, and also hold on to the faith that these things take time, and the faith that something will come of this, and it will be something that I will not be able to imagine, and it'll be something that I will not be able to control. And I don't know exactly what is going to happen. It's like you plant a seed and you give it everything you can, the sunlight, the oxygen, the water, the minerals, and very rich soil, but you don't really know what's going to happen to that seed. You don't know if it's going to get a blight, or if it's going to flourish, and then how is it going to flourish. So I think being flexible looks like planting the seed and letting it go, knowing that something will come of it. And even if it does get a blight or it doesn't, then planting another seed and letting it go. Just not letting go of something that I care deeply about, and just keep doing it in different ways, not the same way, but in different ways.
That's really beautiful, LaShawn. I like that. What is maybe a sentence or two that you want to close with today?
I want to, well, I mean, I want to kind of steal this sentence and use it as my coaching nugget of wisdom, because I know that we're over time. And also like take the ball over to you for coaching nugget of wisdom. But mine is, I'm hopeful. And I know that these times are challenging, and it does seem like we are heading for some dark times. I'm hopeful that as long as there are people like, like you and me, Eryn, all will be well. We don't know how it is going to be, but I'm hopeful. And I believe that as long as we are taking action towards a better future, then there's always hope.
I love that. And I think for my coaching nugget of wisdom today, I want to circle back to that uniting together versus uniting against. My call to action is, how can we unite together across differences on at least one policy issue that we can create hopeful change with?
Thanks for joining us for Coaching as Benevolence. I'm LaShawn with Mayshell Sage Place, Positive Intelligence Coaching.
And I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings, Grief and Loss Coaching.
Have a benevolent day.